rather be than right here, right now, tuning in to Bills Central Radio.
Time now for Bills Central Radio with ProFootballCentral.com's Chris Brown and BillsMafia.com Del Reid.
Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. Defense, rain, sleet, or snow.
And we are back here on Bills Central Radio. This is your host, Chris Brown. I'm also on the line with the co-host of the show, Del Reid. How are we doing this afternoon?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not too much. We also have a special guest for our listeners today. We also have on the line Coach Sal Capaccio. He is a host for WGR550 as well as Time Warner Cable Sports Television in Buffalo. Thank you for joining us today, Sal. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Thank you. Well, we want to start off. I got a quick question for you. A little bit about yourself. You became a host for, WGR550 Radio and the Time Warner Cable Sports, as I said just a second ago. You took kind of a unconventional and frankly an inspiring route to get to where you are now. Would you mind sharing a little bit about to our listeners about your story and how you came and to where you are now?
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions about me, not that it's bad or good in either way, is that one day I flipped on a computer and started podcasting and doing some things, and then all of a sudden I wound up at WGR after doing some things like that. And that's not really the case, but it is a different route than most people took. I actually went to school to be in broadcast journalism and do this for a living. When I was a kid, my goal in life was to be a sports media member in Buffalo. I mean, I wanted to be Van Miller, play-by-play voice of the Bills, or Rick Jeanneret, play-by-play of the Sabres, or Rick Azar on Channel 7, WKBW in Buffalo. Ed Kilgore is a friend of mine now, and Channel 2, those guys, those were my idols growing up. I wanted to be them. I went to Syracuse University to do that. After I got out of Syracuse, I went down to Florida to start my radio career, and I was at a little station in a retirement community down there, a little south of Sarasota. And I was doing sports, and we were doing like Little League baseball and things like that. I was kind of covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tampa Bay Rays, things like that, and high school sports. And I was living in a little retirement community, and I was bored as heck. So I started coaching on the side, Little League baseball, Pop Warner football. And my radio career just hadn't really taken off the way I wanted. I was kind of stuck, and I thought I'd be there for like 2 years, and then boom, ESPN, right? I mean, I think everybody thinks that when they're young in this business, and things just weren't going, the way I wanted to, and I wasn't making, a lot of money, and I was doing a lot of different things. So I decided. So the high school coach came to me and said, "Hey, I have an opening on my football staff or varsity. Would you like to join us?" And I did. And I loved it so much after one spring football, they have spring football in Florida like they do in college, that I decided to become a teacher. So I left radio and TV altogether, and I went back to the University of South Florida, which was a good choice because I met my wife there, my wife of 10 years now. And I became a high school football coach, a high school track coach, and a high school teacher. I taught government and U.S. history for 10 years. And I still stayed a little bit in radio and a little bit in TV up in Sarasota doing a talk show with somebody once a week. And it was really fun. But every day on my way to work, I was always kind of wanting to get back to Buffalo to do this for a living, and it was like something that was missing in my life. And sure enough, in 2007, WGR had made a change and had let go of one of its hosts. So I said, hey, why not? I'll apply for the job. And I did. And one of the things I was doing at the time was I had started my own podcast just to do it because I liked talking about the Bills so much with people, and I was doing a podcast. Well, the WGR had told me they liked me, but they weren't ready to hire me full time. So they said, if you can keep doing some reps and getting more reps and doing what you're doing somehow, maybe revisit us later. So I started doing a little webcam show, and that was kind of the purpose of it, to keep involved in the game, basically, keep my reps going. And that really blew up. And as Del will tell you, a lot of people saw me down in Florida, and they called it, Mommy's Basement. And I was some guy who was just a loser who turned on a webcam who was talking about the Bills. But, there was always a goal in mind, and the goal was to get back to Buffalo and to be a radio and or TV host, but especially on radio. And finally, I was lucky enough that my wife one day basically said, look, I know you'll never be happy unless you try, so if you want to move to Buffalo, we'll move to Buffalo. And, WGR said, if you ever move here, we'll give you something to do. We'll hire you, and then from where you go from there is up to you. So sure enough, I called. I said, hey, you always told me I could come up, and they said, sure. And a year and a half ago, I dropped everything cold turkey, guys. I left my full-time teaching and coaching job. My wife left her full-time job, and we packed up everything, put it in a U-Haul, grabbed our dog, and came up to Buffalo and lived in a little one-bedroom apartment over off the Elmwood Village Strip, and started working at WGR full-time. And then things started happening on the TV side where I made some contacts, and things went really well. And there's a long story for you, but guess what? Now I'm here, and I'm loving life, and the only regret I have is that I didn't do this sooner, because I wonder – where I'd be right now. But believe me, I'm very happy where I am, and I look forward to a nice, hopefully long career here in Buffalo sports media. And if it takes me somewhere else, it takes me somewhere else. But that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. I know it's a little lengthy, but it is a little unconventional. Most people don't go that route. But, again, like I said, the big thing for me is I think people sometimes think that I was just a guy who turned on a webcam one day in his mom's basement, said some things about the Bills, and then wound up on WGR. But that's really not the case. I actually had that goal in life all along, and I really worked hard towards it and took a lot of abuse for some of the things I was doing, and here I am.
Well, that's definitely some great inspiring stuff, and it goes to show, your goals aren't as far as you reach as you think they are. And, you proved it, your success story. You went different avenues and different routes, and you're back where you want to be, so it's good. Now, you had mentioned your ties to Syracuse, and as a Syracuse grad, Bills fans all know that Doug Marrone, the head coach, was coach at Syracuse. And you having strong ties to the school, you're pretty familiar with what Doug Marrone brings to the table. From your personal perspective, what do you believe he's going to bring to one Bills drive that previous coaches weren't able to do in previous years?
Well, I think the big thing about Doug Marrone is, and I've told this story a few times in case people haven't heard it, when he got to Syracuse, he was an alum of Syracuse. He played offensive line at Syracuse University in the 80s under Coach Dick McPherson. And Dick McPherson was a pretty good disciplinarian, actually, and then Coach Pasqualoni took over, and he did as well. Well, then Greg Robinson had the reins for 4 years at Syracuse, and he kind of let the kids do whatever they wanted, and they really didn't have much discipline in the program, and they lost on top of it. They were horrible. So when he got fired and Doug Marrone came in, he brought a discipline mentality. And in his first 18 months, get this, guys, on the job, his first 18 months in Syracuse, 20 kids left the Syracuse University football program because they could not handle the way Doug Marrone was dealing out discipline and wanted those kids to act and behave off the field and on the field. And he really changed the culture of Syracuse University football. And it wound up, really helping the team, obviously, because they wound up going to a bowl game right away in his second season, 2 bowl games in 4 years, both wins. And then he had some kids with legal troubles while he's been there. He had some arrests and things like that, but, he was able to deal with them. So I expect the same thing in Buffalo. I expect him to bring a very disciplined approach, to expect people to act a certain way, and if they can't act like that and not only act like that but perform the way they're supposed to perform, that he's not going to tolerate it. And I want that kind of coach in Buffalo. I think that's exactly what the Bills need, because I think they do need a culture shift of some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying they're bad guys. They're not. They're great guys. But it needs to be a culture change, and this represents a big culture change for the Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting to think about, that there's a new sheriff in town. Unfortunately, we get one about every 3 years, but this one looks like it's going to be exciting and bring something new to the table, like Chris just said. Okay, Sal. So digging back a little bit, into your past, like we just asked you about Syracuse, maybe not as far, but when you were in Florida, you were coaching football in addition to being the history and economics and government teacher and everything. And I was creeping on you a little bit on your website, so I did a little research before we did the whole Q&A here. And you actually coached defensive backs, at least for 1 year that I was able to tell.
Yeah, I did actually coach for a few years. I moved around a little bit. I primarily coached quarterbacks in my coaching life, but I did coach defensive backs for, I believe, 2 to 3 years at the varsity level.
Okay, great. So 2 or 3 years, we'll build on that. So Tuesday morning, you and Jeremy were referencing the pre-snap reads article that I'm gonna ruin his name. Cian, I'm not sure. CIANAF on Twitter. If anybody wants to follow him, he did a great article on Stephon Gilmore and basically said this kid is already elite. Now, there's been a lot of debate back and forth this morning on Twitter that I've seen in terms of, is that a little presumptuous? Is that, is it too early to call him elite or something along those lines? So from what you've seen, with a little bit of history with defensive backs and everything, what's your take on Stephon Gilmore?
Well, I love Stephon Gilmore. I think that he is going to be a really good player in this league. The thing that I think I caution fans about with Stephon Gilmore is, don't judge him on interceptions and numbers of interceptions, because a lot of times the elite cornerbacks in this league just don't get those numbers because, quarterbacks don't throw their way. So they're not going to have as many opportunities to have those numbers. Stephon Gilmore knows what his job is. His job is not to intercept passes necessarily. His job is to make sure the guy that's intended to get the pass does not get it. That's his job, and he's going to be very good at that. What I really like about Stephon is he has such an even-keeled mentality. And drawing on my coaching experience, the best kids that I ever coached were the ones that didn't get rattled in any situation, and if they got beat, hey, it's going to happen. You got to line up and play the next play because that's just 30 seconds away, and you can't let that affect you. And if you get an interception, you got to make sure you get to the sidelines and get ready to go back out there because you never know. You may have to go back out there next play if the offense turns it over. So, yeah, he's very even-keeled. I love that about Stephon Gilmore. I love the way he plays physical at the line. He impressed me last year when I was at training camp on the field, guys, with the way he really handled Stevie Johnson off the line. And as you know, that's hard to do. I mean, nobody really handles Stevie off the line. And Stevie got the better of him a few times, but I thought he got the better of Stevie several times when I watched them in one-on-one matchups. This kid's only going to get better, and I'm really looking forward to what he can do on the field. But I wouldn't judge him on interceptions. He may have 10, who knows, but I think he'll probably wind up being a 5-6 interception guy over the next year or 2 years, whatever, and he'll just do a really solid job, though, in coverage and against the run.
Yeah, that's what they always say about Revis, right? People who are lazy and they look at the stats, you say, well, Revis doesn't get any interceptions. Well, that's because people don't throw at him.
That's right.
So staying in the defensive backfield here, there was a great write-up by Tim Graham in Sunday's Buffalo News about Jairus Byrd's agent, Eugene Parker. I just want to give a plug for Tim's article. If anybody hasn't had a chance to see that, check it out. But do you think that a long-term deal with Byrd is going to get done when you realize that there's already a really rich man on that side of the football for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, long-term deal with Byrd will get done. I just hope it's with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he's going to sign somewhere long-term. Here's the thing. He'll play for the Bills next year. I would be shocked if he didn't. Obviously, there's a chance that he doesn't. He'll play for the Bills next year. The question is, does the long-term deal get done this offseason or next offseason? Let's remember, guys, he can sign the one-year tender, and then they have another year to basically work on a long-term deal. So, I think that, people jump to, they get really scared about the fact, oh, my God, you got to sign him to a long-term deal or else nothing's going to work out. He could play on a one-year deal. He'll make that $6.9 million, which is good money, and that buys both him and the team time to work out a long-term deal in the future. And guys have done that before. Look at Dwayne Bowe, what happened with him in Kansas City. He played on the tag, and then, he wound up signing a long-term deal before he hit free agency last year. So things like that happen a lot. I think the Bills know that they have a guy that they feel is special, and the way I think they know that is because they use the tag. The Bills don't use the tag very much. They use the tag on Jairus Byrd, so that means that that shows you the kind of feelings they have about him. They didn't even really talk to Andy Levitri. He basically just walked out the door without an offer. So I think that shows you the kind of value they put on Jairus. What scares me is that Eugene Parker is known to play some hardball, as you just referenced the Tim Graham article, and he's going to try and get every penny that his client is worth, and I'm sure he believes his client is worth top 2 or 3 at least safety money.
Oh, absolutely. And if you take a look at the top 3 safety contracts, they're asking pretty bargain money. With Golson just getting a big deal, Weddle not too long ago. So Bird's definitely going to get his money, and Eugene's going to make sure of that. Now, with the conclusion of OTAs not too long ago, based on what you've seen and heard for the past few weeks of OTAs, give us a position on offense and on the defensive side of the ball that we should keep an eye on, competition-wise, within the players.
Offense and defense competition-wise, I think the left guard position is going to be very interesting. Who's going to play there, right? And we don't know. They got to find somebody, though. They don't have anybody at that spot right now that really knocks your socks off. So that's going to be an interesting competition. But that's not sexy to look at in training camp, so I'll just say wide receiver because there's a lot of guys fighting for just a couple of spots that might be, come down and up for grabs. I'm not certain that TJ Graham makes the roster. I'm not saying he won't. But I think he's a guy that has to prove it in training camp that he can beat out Marquise Goodwin, for example. They could keep both of them. Marquise Goodwin, he probably is going to make the team considering he's, in this regime, and Doug Whaley is part of this draft, probably had a little bit more say. Those guys probably will both make the team, but who knows? Is Brad Smith going to make the roster? I mean, that's a cap hit that you talk about the money issue there and the fact that he does play special teams, which helps him. But, what does he do for you as far as a wide receiver? I'll say this. I know that Doug Marrone really liked the way Brad Smith looked in the first couple OTAs. So, he's got that going for him as well. Wide receiver is an interesting spot. Who gets that number 2 spot? Is it Robert Woods? You're going to probably see a rookie line up at the number 2 spot at wide receiver, and that's going to be really interesting. On the defensive side of the ball, I think everybody knows linebacker is the place to look. There's just several guys fighting for spots. I do a TV show here with Arthur Moats, and I'm wondering what's going to happen with Arthur this year. I think the Bills like him because he plays different positions. He's very versatile, and they're going to very much value guys who do that. Nigel Bradham is a guy that I think that you can pencil in right now to start at the outside spot. Kiko Alonso is probably going to start at an inside spot. But what happens with Jerry Hughes? Where do you put him? Is Mark Anderson a defensive end or an outside linebacker? He's a guy that, you have to figure out where he's going to wind up fitting in because Mario Williams, 3-4-4-3. That's really an interesting thing. Those guys who play 3-4-4-3 outside, and then you got those other guys, Manny Lawson. What happens with him? So I think linebacker is a really, really interesting spot for me to come this training camp for the battles there.
Okay, you just threw a lot of names at us, all good names that we're familiar with. How about one more? Maybe somebody who's under the radar, fans aren't even really thinking of, aside from maybe a couple of the real diehards that are, cruising through every possible blog and update and everything. But what's one player that is really going to surprise people? You predict this coming training camp?
Surprise people? Probably. Well, I'll say a guy to keep an eye on, a guy that I really like. That maybe you should keep an eye on who. I don't know if it'll surprise people because I think people know about his energy. That is Keith Pugh. Keith Pugh, the linebacker out of Howard. He is, to me, Keith Pugh is Arthur Moats. So they're the same guy pretty much. It's crazy. When you talk to Keith Pugh, he just has a ball of energy, and he's really just a major, the guy loves to talk and loves to play football, and he's really energetic and he's upbeat, and that describes Arthur. And I know that because Arthur's my co-host, and he's the same way. And I think Keith Pugh, who, by the way, led the nation last year in tackles behind the line of scrimmage, guys, tackles for loss, I should say, led the nation in that category coming out of Howard. That's a guy I think that you could really keep an eye on. So he could be a guy that could surprise everybody. I'll give you one on the offensive side. Undrafted free agent, because left guard is a spot where they need a guy. Zach Chibane out of Syracuse. Zach Chibane played for Doug Marrone and Nathaniel Hackett, so he knows the offense, has a little bit of an added edge in that left guard spot. He's a long shot as an undrafted free agent. He's the only offensive lineman on the team who weighs less than 300 pounds, so he's not a big guy, but I do think he's a guy that could wind up making this 53.
Okay, going back to Arthur Moats, and it's funny you should say that about Keith Pugh. I get that vibe from Keith Pugh as well in terms of the few interviews I've heard with him on podcasts and stuff like that. He seems like a really positive type of fired up kind of guy, constantly. And then also that was a great interview you had with Zach on your show this past weekend. That was thanks for bringing him on. I know.
He really added a lot and told us a little bit about Marrone and Nathaniel Hackett, and it was really cool talking to him. I do think he's a guy who could make the team. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, in terms of Arthur Moats, you actually host a show with him. I actually was able to this past season get out there and watch you guys tape it and everything, and be a part of the little audience there at JP Bull Feathers. It was a neat experience. Can you talk about that show, Out of Bounds, and just basically how you got involved with it, and basically, how fun is it to do that?
Well, it's really fun, obviously, but I'll get to that in a moment. But how I got involved was, believe it or not, again, I was doing the webcam thing, and I was doing my show from Florida in my little studio, my office, which was in my house, doing my show. I was on a webcam, and one of the things I never said in the original thing we talked about was, as you guys know, I kind of made a name for myself when I broke the Terrell Owens to Buffalo story. That was something that I had found out firsthand. The Bills were going to sign Terrell Owens, or they were having him in for a visit. It was very likely we were going to sign him. I threw it out there on my website. I was the first in the country to do that. And all of a sudden I'm getting interviewed by NFL Network and WGR and all these places. And it kind of put me on the map. So a lot of different people would come to my show because they knew that I was a guy that kind of knew things. And one of the people that came to watch every week and got in touch with me, and one day I get a message that says, "Hey, are you local? I'm a TV producer in Buffalo." His name is Brian Jopp, and he is the one of the owners of Ghost Line Entertainment. The other owner is Mike Butino. They're great guys. Mike Butino and Brian Jopp. It's called Ghost Line Entertainment. and they run the TV production company. So it's actually, the show is produced by them. It airs on Time Warner. It's not actually produced by Time Warner. It's produced by them. And he said, "Are you local?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, all I do is show up here and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, there's a chance I could be coming to Buffalo within a year. So, if you want to stay in contact." And we stayed in contact. And when the whole thing happened and my wife said, if you want to go to Buffalo, when I had that, thought, I said, "Hey, well, I could actually do this for TV too." And that was kind of one of the impetuses that helped me get up there. If Brian didn't have that opening to host his show, I may never have come up for just WGR. I don't know. I don't know if it would have been, worth it. It was a tough call as it was, but knowing I'd be in TV as well and doing the show every week really helped. So I got up here, and they've been great to work with. They're really good to me. They're great guys, and the whole crew, the guys and girls on the crew, the camera people, everybody. And they got to make me look good, put makeup on. So obviously they're pretty good at what they do. So Arthur, it was Donald Jones, the host of the show. Donald was the host last year. The show's been on for a while. They've been through several hosts. Nate Clements was a host at one point. But anyway, when I got up there, Donald Jones was the host. And it was me and Donald, and we went to we did it TGI Fridays every Monday night. They were contracted to do it at a different location. We went around Western New York to different TGI Fridays. It was a great experience. But the best shows really were those first few I ever did, because remember, guys, the Bills started off 4-1 a couple of years ago. And it was great because fans were just coming out by the boatloads every show. In that year, we had Ryan Fitzpatrick, we had Fred Jackson after they beat New England in that historic game when they beat New England. We had Marcel Darius come out. It was great. We had just really big players come out and stars come out to the show, so it was getting packed. Well, when the Bills really started, losing, the crowds didn't come out as much, but it was still just as fun for me to go and talk. The hardest part about it is whether it's Donald or Arthur, talking to those guys on a Monday after they lose, and them bringing a player on, a teammate, when they have to talk to them after they lose and kind of ask questions about the game. That gets a little rough every week after you've lost so many games, you know what I mean? And it kind of gets a little difficult that you have to come up with a different storyline or talk about something else because, the team's losing all the time, and it's different. But I'll say this. Arthur is a 180 from Donald. Donald, sometimes I had to pull some teeth to get some answers out of. Arthur, I can say one word, and he just takes over the show, and that's the way it should be, actually.
Yeah, we had Arthur here on the radio show a couple weeks ago, and the man has a great personality, does not stop smiling. I don't think I've ever met a happier guy in life.
Well, he has two wonderful and beautiful daughters now, and he has a great wife, and he has a great life, and I'd smile, too, all the time if I was Arthur Moats. The joke I always give him, though, is there's not enough room on the TV show for both of us because we both talk more than anybody else throughout all of Western New York.
All right, so we got one more question for you. Everybody asks this question every year: is can the Bills make the playoffs? What we want to know is there's been a trend going on recently in the past few years in the NFL where a team from a division has gone literally from worst to first in their division. Do you feel the Bills can do that this year? And then also, what is your prediction in the June outlook of things for a Bills win-loss record for the upcoming season?
All right, well, don't hold me to it, obviously. It's always tough to do it in June. Can they? Sure, they can. First place? I don't know. That's a little tough. Playoffs? Wild card? I sound like a little Jim Moore there. Playoffs? Yeah, they can. I think that would be a little bit more, at least, attainable. But the schedule's hard, guys. It's a hard schedule this year. They're playing some damn good quarterbacks. They got to play Tom Brady twice this year. They got to play Cam Newton. They got to play Andy Dalton. They got to play Drew Brees. They got to play Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan. Come on. They have a tough schedule, and it's going to be hard to do that. But, I like the culture change over at One Bills Drive. I think the Bills are on the right track. And as you know, in the NFL, just like last year, we thought the Bills had a quote-unquote easy schedule. Then all of a sudden, the NFC West just became this big powerhouse, and everybody was great. That can happen again. It could be where you think these teams are going to be really good. Flacco and the Ravens, they got to play them. You think these teams are going to be really good, and maybe all of a sudden they're not. So anything can happen. I'm always the optimist. Right now, I'll be optimistic and say they can go 8-8. I think that's the record I would put them at right now. But a bounce here, a bounce there, guys. You can. They lost a game against the Rams in Tennessee where they dropped interceptions at the end, and that's the difference between 6 wins and 8 wins. Well, who knows? Maybe that's the difference between 8 wins or 10 wins this year. Oh, absolutely.
Like you just said, bounce here, bounce there. And if you look back on last year, there were a couple of plays that could have been made at the end of the game where it could could have switched everything around and could have made the Bills season. So definitely right about that. Well, we'd like to thank you once again, Sal, for coming on the radio show today. We appreciate you taking the time and answering a few questions for us.
No problem, guys. Thanks a lot. And, just so everybody knows, I'll be on all week on WGR in the mornings with Jeremy. I'm filling in for Howard this week. So if anybody wants to chime in on the Bills, they can do that and listen to WGR or WGR550.com online. And I'll be on all week. And then the first 3 weeks in July, I'll be on the morning show almost the whole month of July. So it'll be really fun, and we'll have a lot of Bills talk leading up to training camp.
Okay, absolutely. And where can our listeners catch you on Twitter, Sal?
At Sal Sports is my Twitter handle. I also have my own podcast. I'm going to get Dell on there. Hey, Chris, we can have you on too before the end of the end of the summer. I'm going to be getting a lot of different people on. I got a really cool interview I did with a Bills backer in Hawaii this week. His name is Paul Lancaster, a 20-year military veteran who is a big Bills fan out in Hawaii. Great guy to talk to. Really interesting story. Got that going on, and that's at salsports.com, and it's in the iTunes store as well, and you can listen to that. I mean, hey, you know what? You guys have a podcast. I have a podcast. We can always promote each other because I think any talk of Bills talk is great for the fans out there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much once again for joining us today, Sal. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
What's up? This is Arthur Moats, number 52 of the Buffalo Bills, and you're listening to Bills Central Podcast on Pro Football Central. Go Bills.
We're back here on Bills Central Radio. We just finished up talking with Sal Capaccio. Great guest on the show. Had some great insight about the Bills' upcoming year and Coach Doug Marrone and his previous ties up in the Syracuse. So I thought he had some great input for the Bills coming up season. What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, I think that was great. I really enjoyed talking to Sal, and I really appreciate him taking the time at the outset to really tell us his story, how he got to be where he is right now, and the path that he's on. We'll see where he ends up in his professional career, but it is inspiring to see that he never gave up on his dream and that he did whatever he had to do to get that experience to finally land on WGR.
Oh, absolutely, and we had mentioned it on the show, and he said it also. He took the unconventional route, and it goes to show people out there can achieve their goals, even though it might not be in the short term, but in the long term, as long as you keep that in perspective, it's always there if you want to go achieve it. And I think Sal did a great job of that, and we're fortunate enough to have him back on WGR to add his insights for everybody in Buffalo about the Bills. And, he also talks about Syracuse and the Sabres as well. So all of New York gets the insight from Sal, which is nice. So we'd like to thank him once again for taking the time and talking with us on Bill Central Radio. He had some great stuff to say about the Bills. Now, just breaking a couple days ago was the announcement made by himself. Jim Kelly had announced to everybody that he had cancer of the jaw. Comes down a little bit as a stunner from a fan's perspective. Being Jim Kelly, the great man that he is, the toughest quarterback arguably to play the position in the league, to having cancer kind of is a little bit shocker, takes fans a little bit back. But as we all know, Jim's the toughest guy, and if anybody can beat it, it's him. So it's that news is a little shocking, but it's good to see he has a little upbeat about surgery coming in later this week for it. So.
Yeah, and the Kelly family is a family of faith. If you follow Jill on Twitter, you'll see she's very vocal about the faith that she has in God and his ability to heal, and also her ability to accept whatever God has for her and her family. I don't know if you ever read the book that she put out, Without a Word, a couple years ago. It was very moving, very, in some ways, heart-wrenching story about how she and her husband and the family were able to, cope with what was going on with their son Hunter. So I don't have any doubts in the Kelly family's ability to handle this new challenge in front of them. And like you said, Jim's as tough as they come, and I'm pretty sure that whatever happens here, it's going to end with Jim kicking cancer's ass.
Oh, absolutely. And you hit it, right there. He's the toughest guy out there, and with his optimism and his, belief in the faith and his family and his friends around him. And I think it was nice to have his friends around him when the announcement came out during his annual golf tournament up there. And it was nice to have his former teammates there to support him and everything. And it just goes to show that he may not be the guy that's always going to be out there asking, for help or anything, but everyone's there to check on him and make sure that he's okay, which is nice to see, from his former teammates. And then, because they extend to being his family. And Steve Tasker actually talked about it. Both of their families are great, friends. They talk all the time. And to have that connection with somebody that you played with on the football field to extend now into their lifehood after years after football is pretty neat. And it goes to show a great thing about football. It can bring families together in times of crisis, such as the announcement of Jim. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that his golf tournament was earlier this week, and like you said, he had his extended family all around him. It just seems kind of almost like perfect timing, for everybody to around him and his circle of friends and his family, just to love up on him and get him ready for the surgery that's scheduled for Friday.
On a lighter note here, just announced today, a few minutes ago actually, that training camp will be opening for the Buffalo Bills. A lot of fans are kind of excited. We're waiting for the announcement to come along. Of course, the annual training camp is held up at St. John Fisher. For those who don't know where that is, that's up in Rochester. The Bills have been there for quite some time now. The coaching staff, as well as the upper management, were there not too long ago. I believe it was yesterday or the day before, taking a little tour of the campus, just because they may not have attended it there, just to see the layout and everything. Training camp opening July 28th on a Sunday. It'll be a night practice. Those night practices are pretty exciting for those who haven't had a chance to attend one of them. A lot of fans go out. It's an exciting time, a family atmosphere, where kids can gain their autographs from their favorite athletes after. A lot of people sit there and just wait for what they call the blowhorn to go off at the end. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, Del. I was there for the first time last year and had a great time when I was up there.
Yeah, it's great. I've had the opportunity to go several times over the past few years. And I don't know if it's just because the regular season have been so disappointing when it's all said and done or what, but training camp is that's probably the best 2.5 weeks it is to be a Bills fan. I mean, there's so much optimism and excitement, and you get the opportunity to see your favorite players up close and personal, and often you have the chance to get them to maybe sign a football or just to shake their hand or get your photo with them or whatever. It's a lot of fun. You get to mix it up with other fans. And that's one of the things I enjoy as well, too, is going up to training camp. And, we all talk to each other constantly throughout the year about the Bills. So, you go over to training camp, you check in on Foursquare or whatever. You tell people on Twitter, like, hey, who's here? And then people will start tweeting you back, and you can mix it up and meet other fans, and it's a great time. I really recommend anybody who's able to make it out to St. John Fisher this coming July and August, do it. Don't if you're waffling, like, I don't know, it's a bit of a drive from where I am, or maybe it's in your backyard if you're in the Rochester area, but just do it. Go. It's a lot of fun, and it's an experience unlike most when it comes to the Bills and the NFL. Yeah, they're still trying to sell you lots of stuff and with merch and everything, and so the whole business end of it is there. But there's getting to see the practices and getting to hang out in the bleachers and everything. It's just a really cool chance. So I really recommend if you have the chance, go.
Now, since you've been there, what if you had to think about it, if you had to nail one on it, what would you say is your favorite moment of training camp at the times you've gone up there?
Okay, this is totally selfish. In 2011, right when the whole Bills Mafia movement took off, right? Okay, so I was at my father-in-law knew somebody who used to work for the Bills, so we actually had the opportunity to sit on the VIP side, which is the far side away from the bleachers. So you get to get even a teeny bit closer with the players, and you're actually at ground level instead of being up above, like on the bleacher side. For those of you who have been there, you know I'm talking about it. And if you haven't been there, go and you'll find out. But we have to be on the VIP side anyway. So it's right towards it's over, right? And Stevie Johnson had been down on the other end of the field signing autographs, and then the PR people come out and they shoo all the players back into the locker room. Well, as Stevie Johnson is going past our end of the field where we were, my father-in-law is screaming, "Bills Mafia! Bills Mafia!" And it was still kind of new, so it was like, you know, you didn't hear it a lot, like unlike last year where everybody was, you know, saying it constantly. So Stevie Johnson looks over, and my father-in-law goes, "This is the guy that started it. This is one of the guys that started it," pointing. So Stevie Johnson walks over, gives me a handshake and gives me the, you know, that lean in and everything, and that was really cool. That was for me. There's never, no matter how many more times I go to camp, that unique type of situation is never going to happen again. So for me, that's my favorite.
Nice. That definitely sounds like a pretty cool experience for sure. Being my first time when I was there last year, I would have to keep it on the Stevie Johnson side. I'm not gonna lie, he's my favorite player. You know, coming out of college, he wasn't well known. He didn't really start to pick up till his third year in the league or so, and we were waiting for him to come around. We were on the rail there up in the stadium portion of it, and he was coming along. You know, you get that heart beating, you know, going, and you're not sure if he's going to stop or whatever. And he ended up stopping. And for those of you who don't know, Stevie also has a mixtape out. So he kind of raps on the side. He has a cousin that he raps with, and one of his songs he had, and I had one of the watches that he wears, the Deuce brand watches. I don't know if you guys have done it. Bills Mafia had the Bills Mafia Deuce brand watches out last year. We had one of those, and we actually had him sign the watch. And one of the lyrics to one of his songs goes something like Deuce brand watches. I don't know what ice is. And when he came over to us, I handed him the watch, and I started singing it to him, and then he started singing it back to me. So we were kind of interacting, rapping a little bit. So I'd say that was my first experience that I'll never forget, being a fan and taking back. You know, you could sit there and say, you know, I had an experience with one of the players, and I kind of interacted with him. So it was pretty cool on my part.
Oh, that's awesome. If you can share a moment, it's one thing to, like, hand a player a football and then he scribbles on it with a Sharpie and hands you the football back. I mean, that's cool. You know what I mean? That's a moment you have. But when you have that opportunity to have a little give and take with a player, I mean, that's priceless. You know, I sound like a complete fanboy here. But, I mean, it is what it is, right? I'll be straight, you know. It's pretty cool when you can have that little interaction. And it's like, yeah, he's not just going, yeah, but he's actually, like, hearing what you're saying and responding back to you. That's awesome. That's a really cool story.
Now, for those who've never been there, what types of things are going on throughout the training camp? You know, a lot of people say it's probably one of the top 3, top 5 training camps to actually attend in the entire NFL. What goes on, you know, besides the practices and just seeing the athletes on the field? I heard there's a lot of interaction that goes around. I believe there's a kids zone that kids can go and play. They have a lot of football attractions where they can walk around as well.
Yeah, I've never been to another team's training camp, so I can't say how it compares to others. But, yeah, there's all kinds of, you know, different activities and stuff. And they have, like, the vendor tent where my kids get a kick out of just getting free stuff. So, I mean, they like going through the vendor tent and getting, you know, little footballs or little this or that or whatever. But, yeah, they have all kinds of different setups in place there around the camp for different things you can do. So, like I said, I've never been to other teams, but it's a lot of fun. And to be honest with you, I typically make a beeline right for the field to, you know, start watching the practice. So I haven't really gone and explored so much, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff there though. It's a good time.
Now there's night practices that goes on at training camp. let's talk a little bit about, real quick, what the difference between a day practice and a night practice really is.
Okay, well, I've never been to a day practice myself. Being a working stiff, I always have to go to the night practices. But I can tell you, if you've been to a day practice, I'll let you speak to that, but I'll tell you what a night practice is like. It's under the lights, so it's got a little bit of a game night feel to it, right? First of all, it's daytime when it starts, right? It's summer, so it doesn't get dark that early. So you watch all the guys do their individual drills at their position. You see the running backs going through, whatever drills they're going through, and you see the linemen hitting the sled sometimes and different things like that. You see the quarterbacks. It's always a thing where the quarterback's trying to throw the football into the cans and everybody's cheering as they, there are barrels and everybody's cheering for that and everything. And then all of a sudden they start going into like 7-on-7 drills and the rest like that, and then they bring the linemen in and everything. It's pretty cool. And the best thing about it, and I make a joke about it, but this is part of the reason why it is one of the best times, is your one of your favorite players or one of your starters can really screw up, right? And I'll pick on a cornerback, the cornerback position, okay? So you can have a cornerback who totally gets burned by the receiver and gives up a touchdown. And you can see it happening over and over again sometimes, just in drills and what they're working on and everything. And the best thing is you can be like, oh, that was a bad play. Huh. And then you just go back into worrying about it. When during the regular season, you say, oh, that was a bad play. We're down by 7. So, that's a nice switch up. It's all like it's fleeting, right? It just happens and it's over with. And you can get back to just like, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just, laughing along, you just made the point where if they make that mistake, during the regular season, it can lead to 7, whereas training camp, you just kind of shrug it off and be like, hey, who's going to make the next play now in training camp? Who's going to make who look foolish, kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all fleeting, and then it's over with, and then you go back to like, oh yeah, that's my team. I'm loving my team. So that's what's kind of cool. And like I said, I've never been to a day practice, so I can't contrast the two for you. But.
Well, I believe during the night practices, and I'm pretty sure you also have to have a ticket required, whereas the day practices, you don't have to have a ticket. Usually, last year when I went, the night practice as well in the stadium portion, and you had to have a ticket. Tickets are free, by the way, I believe. Is that right?
Yes. Normally you can get them in local to Rochester venues, and I think it's like Verizon Wireless and stuff like that. But then also, I believe season ticket holders have the ability to get some as well. I think that's how I got mine last year.
Okay. Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting time. We're looking to possibly have Q&A with some of the fans during that time. Del and I are going to try to hook up at training camp to come with a, so to speak, live radio show and interact with some fans coming up. So stay tuned for that in the next month there. Maybe we'll answer some of your questions, get your interaction. Who do you think, we're going to win some of the training camp battles. But definitely have some good insight coming up for training camp as far as position battles go that we're all going to be looking forward to. So wraps up this week's show. We'd like to once again thank Sal Capaccio for taking his time and joining us here on Bills Central Radio, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Bills Central Radio. For Bills news, updates, stats, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.
Shout, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, defense, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, touchdown, rain, sleet, or snow, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, defense, rain, sleet, or snow. Okay, new vibe, new feel, new coach, new Bills, red, white, blue steel, hard work, true skill. This year's on you, Spill. LDM, I'm predicting that. Touchdown, Stevie Johnson, swag cooking.